All right, let me turn this off to save us a little noise. Um, we're going to be talking about this guitar today, which means we're in part 14 of my guitars. And this one's a little different. Let me take these off. What we're dealing with is I had been looking, I had a Super Strat, but I didn't have a classic three coil single Strat, and that was kind of something I was looking for as I was getting more into collecting different sounds and everything. So, but not having much of a budget, we were off to Facebook Marketplace, which, as many of you in the community know, is kind of a wild place. I started looking. Thankfully, Strats are one of the most copied guitars in the world, so finding something that was going to be a budget thing was probably going to be fairly easy. But finding one in my area was a little different because there's I don't have as interesting or widespread guitar stuff around here, so sometimes I have to travel a little farther out. This one I lucked out on. But for example, Facebook Marketplace being kind of weird, finding things that just either shouldn't be sold or shouldn't have happened to poor guitars. For example, if I'm doing this right, I'm going to have a couple pictures up over here. Somebody put this poor melody maker up that had been absolutely mutilated with glitter, Satan's crafting tool, and it's still out there. They're asking $100 for it. I don't know how much work and sandpaper would be required, and probably you would still find glitter attached. They had glitter over the magnets of the pickups too, so yeah, that's a hard no. On the other end of the spectrum, somebody still is asking $2,500 for an Angus Young autographed guitar with certificate of authenticity for the autograph, which that's fine. The only problem with it is it's a Strat, which Angus Young is not widely known for playing. If it was an SG or something, I could see, okay, that's kind of cool. I could see somebody wanting that hang on their wall. But it also doesn't show a picture of the headstock in the listing at all, or I would have shown that. I'm not sure if this is a Fender. Is this a Squire? Is it something like mine that was just a cheap knockoff that somebody took a bunch and had autographed to try and make a profit on? Because I love Angus Young. I don't know that I'd be willing to pay $2,500 just for his autograph on a guitar-shaped object. So anyhow, as I was looking through, I did come across the ad for the guitar we're talking about today, and it was listing at $35. And just showing you like this was all I saw. I'm like, all right, that looks to be in decent shape. There was a couple pictures, didn't look to be any cracks, nothing really wrong with it. I had no idea what this brand was at all, but I did go meet the guy. He was right here in my hometown. I drove over to our local mini mall parking lot to meet him, and just talked to him a bit. It had been bought for his son for some kind of present, birthday or Christmas, I don't remember what. But since then, it's sat in the closet for about 2 years, just doing nothing. So when I pulled it out of the box, it played decent enough out of the box, but there were several things which I'll get into that needed to be rectified. But for $35, I had my traditional Strat. So let me set this down and let's chat a little bit about the guitar and the company. Well, the company discussion is not going to be all that great. What we had going on with Spectrum, I tried to look up any history on Spectrum guitars or Spectrum branded guitars, and there really isn't much to go off of other than a few Reddit threads and other forums talking specifically about this type of Strat. If you search for Spectrum guitars, you're probably going to come up with other makers that made guitars named Spectrum. West Tone Spectrum is one, which actually looks like a decent guitar and actually pulls in a fair price. It's not related to this at all. So, going by off of what I found on the forums, Spectrum branded guitars The most I can tell is they were manufactured in China to be packaged up as kits and sold through big box stores. I think Walmart, Target, or whatever. In my case, the box that this one came in, I'll have an I don't have the box still, but I found an example of one online. I'll put it up. Came in a box with a Kohl's price tag on it for $200. If you're at all familiar with Kohl's, you know that any price tag on their stuff is probably not what it's going to sell for, because they tend to do never ending sales or markdowns or coupons and everything. So I imagine this was probably marked down to $119, $99, something like that, knowing their pricing strategies. So $200 would have been way out of the league for this particular guitar, even with everything that came with it. It had the box, had a there was no gig bag in the box that I found, unless the guy had taken it out and there was there. But standard guitar stuff, an Allen wrench, the tool. There was no tuner with it. It did come with an amp that I would have just as soon that they kept. Before we do the actual official sound tones, I will give you a short demo of the 9-volt operated Spectrum Fart Box. This is a punishment. If I was given an electric guitar as a kid, I would have soon rather had no amp at all than this, and you'll understand why later. But it's just an interesting little novelty piece to have sitting around my area now. Certainly not for use. Maybe I could make... Nah, I was going to say maybe I could use that for testing pickups, but the way it sits in the jack, I'll show you, is just weird. So anyhow, that's pretty much the history of these. I cannot seem to find these for sale anywhere new anymore, but they are everywhere on Facebook Marketplace and Reverb. Similar to First Act guitars showing up out there. There were some Spectrum LP models, which I don't see so much of those, but there are just tons of the Spectrum Strats out there. And as far as what they're useful for, well, we'll go over that when I get into the specs and the sound samples a little bit. But in short, they're decent mod platforms. And I'll put up a couple pictures here from Reverb listings that I found. There were a couple incredibly creative people that actually knocked it out of the park with redoing some of these and making them actually look kind of cool. I don't know that I'm going to do that with mine, but it's kind of neat. I wonder if they just did the art, and I'd have to look at the listings to know a little better if they just arted them up, or if they actually did a full mod and replaced the hardware, because the hardware that comes with these is not great. So with that being said, let's talk about the specs. These are all things that I kind of figured out for myself, because there is no website with specs on what is on the Spectrum guitar. Sorry, this tuner is here. I'll pull it off for a second. We're going to be doing sound samples with that on, because for various reasons it does not hold tune right now. So what you have is a Spectrum Strat type guitar, 3 single coils, so your classic Strat, 5-way switch, and volume, tone, and tone, and your input jack, of course, straps in the normal places, and it has the beak headstock, which is part of another thing that led me to believe these are made in China, because there's no sticker on here yet indicating it. I imagine there may have been one on the back of the headstock at some time, and it just fell off. Probably in the box that I threw out. But we've got the Spectrum logo, a fairly generic font, a rather pronounced beak. Technically, I could probably do something with that, because I do like the neck otherwise, but I think we'll just leave it as is, because I'm probably not going to be keeping this guitar. The year it was manufactured, absolutely no way of telling. There's no serial numbers on it. There is nothing on the neck plate. There's no model number to indicate that, oh, this is slightly different than this Spectrum guitar. As long as I've had it, and as long as that guy had it in his closet, I'd estimate this to be at least 5 to 6 years old. How long Kohl's had it sitting in their stores or warehouses where it came from, who knows? As I said, it was manufactured. All evidence online points to China. Between the beak, the style of the guitar, some of the QC issues that I saw when I got inside to do mods makes me think that that's what it was. The weight of this I think wanted it to be a Les Paul when it grew up, because it is 8.6 pounds. So it is kind of a beast of a guitar. And I don't think me putting locking tuners on it accounted for that. It's all in the base of the guitar. I'm assuming this is basswood just because of it felt rather soft when taking the pick guard off and everything. But again, no way of telling, as there's no no site with any details for this particular model. The scale length, it's a standard 25.5 inch Fender type scale length, so they spec'd that correctly. As I said, the body I believe is basswood. The neck is for sure maple. It's a decent maple. It's not highly shined up, but it's not really satiny. There's a little bit, could be a little sticky. That could be something I could probably take care of with just a little Scotch-Brite to handle that. For me, the kicker when I pulled it out of the box, and I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera, was there's a fair amount of movement in the maple fretboard. It has, I wouldn't call it flamed, maybe more quilted, but it's very, very cool looking in person. And I really was taken by how well that neck fits with the body. It is a bolt-on neck, as you would expect for a guitar that's sub $200. The handshake, it's all right. It's maple neck, 22 medium-ish frets. They were really gungy when I took it out of the box, so I had some fret erasers and did a little bit of work on them, but it needs a spade with a true polishing, and then probably leveling, crowning. We'll see how many of the tools I have for that and if I get into it. But the first things first, there's going to have to be a lot of work done on it. The radius, again, I'll know for sure when I get gauges. This feels, again, pretty flat, possibly a 12-inch, again, with standards out of most of the China factories building copies like this. A lot of the stuff that comes out of there is 12-inch radius. This could be a little less than that, because looking down it, there is a little bit of a visual radius that I can see when looking over the strings. We'll have to see when I get into the spades for this. I will hopefully have more of the tools and I can get more of a deep dive going for this. Black dot markers on the fretboard. The nut itself was a cheap piece of plastic. It was cut terribly. So when I replaced the other hardware on the guitar, it became apparent that this had to be replaced. It's a 42 millimeter nut. I replaced it with a bone nut. We'll get into that when I do the playing demos a little bit, but this still needs work. The plastic nut, when I took it out, was so flimsy that you could bend it. It was just very, very weak. This I put in, and I thought I did okay until I tried to string things up. I knew I was going to have to cut the nut to get it intonated properly, but things were just acting really weird. I don't know if you can see on the end there. Yeah, it's not going to come into focus for you. But there is a little gap under that side of the nut. So I tried pounding that back into place, and then it puts the gap on the other side of the nut. So somewhere in the middle of the nut slot, I didn't get things completely flat when I took the old one out. So there was some glue or something still in there, or maybe a piece of plastic yet that I thought I got that is making it. So that's going to have to come out. We're going to have to do some work and actually get everything done with it. The pickups that came with this were 3 rather weak single coil pickups. I want to say under 5K output, and they were just muddy. Like I said, it played okay out of the box, and it was okay for what it was, but it really didn't take to anything other than really bright, clean tones. So I found on a weekend where they were doing sales, and actually this one's still going on, these are Guitar Fetish BL11 overwound, reverse wound pickups with cream colored plastics. The ones that were on there were bright white. I'll put up a before and after shot while we're talking here so you can see what it looked like with the plastics changed out. But these pickups are still on sale, and I'll include a link in the video description for $14.95. They're ceramic pickups, but they're overwound, a pretty decent output for what they are. So it's more like I'd compare it to some of the hot sets that that Fender has put out, whether it's Alnico or ceramic. These are ceramic, which is fine, especially for a Strat. They sound really nice. I also replaced the output jack with a pure tone jack. Oh, just real quick, the specs on these, since I did get my multimeter up and running, the neck output is 10K, the middle output's 11K, and the bridge output is 11K. I didn't get the in-between ones, but usually they're about half of that. So this ended up, I think they end up in the 5 to 6 range in the middle positions. I'll have to update the description later if I get that. The 5-way switch was a PCB. I replaced it with a fender switch just because trying to do the solder work myself, the PCBs made it even more confusing, whereas the regular switch, you can easily find better diagrams of what goes where. The master volume and 2 tones were dime size pots. I replaced those with full size pots, and around here I'll put up an after picture of what the before and after of what the electronics looked like when we were done with it. I also did not like the bright white witch hat knobs for the volume and tone, so I replaced those with cream colored plastics, which I think actually go very well. Cream colored tip for the switch. I kept the pick guard because that's more, it doesn't show up on the camera well, it's more minty looking than bright white, so I think it goes well with the cream colored pickups. Also, I wasn't sure I was going to find a pick guard that would fit exactly here, and didn't want to do a whole lot of drilling on this because I'm a little suspicious of how thin everything is on here, because when I did open up the trem cab in there to redo the bridge, which I also replaced with a Geiger bridge, the original one was exceedingly cheap and horrible. The saddles were awful. The back of the where the springs are is so thin that if I tapped on it too hard, I'd probably poke straight through. So it's the cavity was routed out. I don't know how thick the body is. If this is a thinner than standard, it would seem weird if it is, because it is so damn heavy. And that is the extent of the mods down here. Finally, I did replace the crappy wing trees with roller string trees, and I got rid of the standard sealed pickups that were there for some Geiger lockers. These are 18-to-1 ratio, I believe. And then the strings are 10s, which I prefer on a standard Strat. I do 9s on a couple things, but most of my guitars I keep 10s on because that's what I prefer. So the nut is going to need some work. Number one, to reseat it properly, but number two, to get cut properly, because as I go through the sound demos, you're going to hear that this may not exactly... Sorry if that made a little noise online for you guys. It shouldn't have, because it was off. We're going to plug this thing in and see if the mic picks up any of the wonderful noise that this makes. The other thing, why you would do this kind of jack for something with a recessed input jack like a Strat, just not good planning. They could have done one of a smaller box amp with a tiny cord and been better off. I think it would have been more versatile than this. So, all right. We're going to turn the volume all the way up, so hopefully the mic picks it up. Let's see if we can get this in here. All right, it's in. Let's see. Power. Ooh, listen to that hum. So we've already got good things happening here. That's the clean tones, I think. Let me make sure the overdrive's not on. Nope, that's the overdrive. So these are your clean tones, folks. Not a lot of low end there, but let's kick on the overdrive and just see. Oh, excellent. There we go. You can get a cool feedback sound out of it, though, but we're going to turn that off because that's just awful. All right. Let's see if we can get that out of there and get into some regular sound samples. I don't know about you, but I don't know. That would have been entertaining for about 5 minutes if I had gotten that as a kid before everybody in the house started yelling at me to stop it. So let's actually start with some real clean tones. And And let me get my headset on so I can hear what you guys are hearing. And we'll just do a quick tune check because I actually played it. How dare I? That might throw it out of tune. Yep. A is good. D, G, usual suspect, a little flat. I do think these. I think this is all related to nut and action problems. So that will be what becomes of this. And the E, something's going on with the nut or the saddle where it's not ringing out properly either. So another project. All right, this is the bridge. Okay, we're going to take another quick tune. We're in position, I'm going to call it position 4. I think 5 is the bridge. I don't know how everybody does that. Position 4, middle and bridge. Another quick tune check. E1 sharp now. Alright, let's try this again. We're not going to keep doing tuning every time, so if some of the samples are a little bit out of tune, my apologies. Alright, position 3, middle pickup. Position 2, neck and middle. Kind of like that position. Neck only. Little bit spicy. I think that was user error and not necessarily out of tune. All right, let's go back to the bridge and we will throw a little bit of overdrive on. At some point there's going to be some hum. I did try it and adjust the noise gate to compensate for single coils, but there will be some, so apologies ahead of time for that. This is just the bridge again, position 1. Position 4, middle and bridge. Just the middle. We have the middle and neck, position 2. Sorry, I had to throw that in. I like the tone on that. And finally, just the neck on its own, position 1. All right, and finally we're going to go back to the bridge, and this is where we're going to start to pick up some of the hum, because we're going to throw quite a bit of overdrive at it. All right, a little noise canceling because we've got position 2, which is the middle in the bridge. Just the middle, start to pick up a little more hum as we go up through the top. Yeah, and for some reason, between the neck and middle, position 2, I don't get as much noise canceling as I would have expected. I don't know if that's a wiring issue or just so much gain. And finally, we have just the neck. All right, I'm gonna turn this back to clean real quick and just see after all of that, just a simple. Yeah, it's been knocked a little bit out of tune, so let's turn that off. I'll take the headset off and we'll just get a couple final thoughts on what's going to happen with my guitar here. So, number one, most of the tuning issues are self-inflicted. As bad as the original hardware was, it did at least stay in tune with the addition of the locking tuners when I added them, but it needed help in the equipment area. So this being the first full mod that I had actually done on anything myself, this is basically the only thing left on this is the neck and the body now, and the strap buttons. The rest of it's been all replaced. I still am learning. I did not know enough about action, radius, nut slot depth, everything else to do this the right way first. So, but the good news is, short of cutting the nut too low or breaking something, there's really not a lot on a guitar setup that you can't fix. Provided that it's in good shape, not a warped neck or anything like that, which would require somebody with way more skill than me or possibly a new neck. But so what I am going to do in the future is I do have a good, this is good too, but I do have a better single coil Strat now, the T's that I won not too long ago. That's we jumped the gun with that in my guitar series just because I was so excited to get it. So I have a classic Strat. I also have the first act Strat, which is the 3 single coils, which we're going to do something silly with, because that one I hold no great attachment to, and the neck isn't as cool as this one. And then I have my Super Strat, the Squire, which I'm going to keep as is as well. So I don't need 3 standard Strats. What I do plan on doing with this is I do want to get it fixed up. Number one, I'm going to make content out of it just by taking the trip on the train, as Ted says, setting the intonation, the tuning, the action, and then getting the nut completely done after I polish the frets, make sure that everything is good, make sure that I don't have any high frets so that I can set the action properly and get it set up. I was going to give this to our friends who run a camp for troubled children, but they weren't sure if that was a fit for what they do out there, or if the kids they take in, that the guitar might get damaged. They don't have anybody that actually knows how to play to teach the kids, so that's still an option if something changes with their situation. Otherwise, I'm probably going to look at schools in the area, or at least talk to the kids' alma mater and see, because I know they did guitar lessons at the school there, and see if this is something that they might want to have on hand for somebody that would like to take guitar lessons but doesn't have one. maybe for use in a small jazz combo or something. It's like I said, it's not a perfect guitar, but by the time I get done with it, with the upgrades I've made to it, it is really decent. It's perfect for a beginner. And I'm hoping to hand it off with a practice amp as well, because I'm sure I've got a couple of those in the basement. So we'll see. If nothing else, maybe one of the schools will find somebody who is expressed an interest in guitar and they didn't have anything for him, and I could just hand it off directly to somebody that way too. But I just want to try and pay it forward because I've been very, very blessed by this community, contest, and everything else. And rather than just try and turn a profit on this, I thought let's try and do something cool with it. So we're gonna see what we can do with it. That's about it for this guitar. I next one is going to be probably the last video because that gets to the end of my guitars. We'll discuss what's going to happen after that, and see where we go from there. Unless something happens and something else comes in the door. Granted, that's going to have to be at the expense of probably getting rid of something else or buying my wife the Highland cow that she wants. So we'll see how that goes. I just want to say thank you to everybody for hanging out with me, discussing my guitars. And as always, I appreciate if you liked what you saw. Please like, subscribe if you want, leave a comment. It'd be fantastic. And until next time.